let's talk about Cambodia. I'd like to know if some of you have ever been to Cambodia. You know that Cambodia is a little Southeastern Asian country. It's located between Thailand and Vietnam and Laos on the north. Our subject today is temple looting in Cambodia. Are we entering a new era? That's true because since last year there was a big event in Cambodia that we're going to talk about. The repatriation of three main statues of the 10th century of the very nice site of Kokke. So it gives the idea, because it was mainly repatriated from the US, and it gave the idea of our dear neighbor Thailand to restitute also some 16 statues, or well, let's say some Khmer artifacts. And there is an article was published on the 19th of January 2015 in the Phnom Penh Post, saying that at the beginning of the year, by mid-January, Thailand officially announced that 16 Cambodian art crafts recovered from smugglers in 1999 will be repatriated in Cambodia. 20 other objects from the same group of seized goods could also be repatriated if further investigations conclusively find they are Cambodian. The problem is that we have some friends, Simon and I, who went there to evaluate the statues, and most of them are fake or very secondary in the story of art of Cambodia. And so, over the past 2 years, Cambodia has received a spate of high-profile antiquities repatriations, including from auction houses Sotheby's and Christie's, as well as an unprecedented voluntary return from New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art. You can imagine that Cambodia is the only country in the world who put a monument in ruins on his flag. Because for us, it's not ruins. For us, it's just the home of the Holy Spirit, which is just governing us, but nothing to do with religions. It's something dealing with the soul, with the spirits of nature, which is governing the whole country. In February this year, so it was last month, was held in Siem Reap, Angkor, the first World Conference organized jointly by the Royal Government of Cambodia, UNESCO, and the UN WTO, World Tourism Organization. And it was the first time that the UN decided to think about the correlation between tourism and cultural sustainable heritage, and also the preservation of all that in order to participate in the development of the country. Now we are going to talk about a recent practical case. Kokke. Kokke means the island of glory, and it was the capital city founded in the 10th century, located in Srayong village, Srayong Commune in Kulen district, which is 4950 kilometers west of the provincial town. And it was built by King Jayavarman IV, who was an usurpator. And this temple is mainly known for the pyramid that you can see on the right-hand side, and its design resembles a 7-step stupa. The temple faces west towards Angkor city, and it was built to worship Traipu Vaneshwara, the god of happiness. So far, 96 temples have been found there for the time being. And a sculpture of Garuda's head on the south lintel is missing. The temple is overgrown by forest. These are the statues who are so dear to Simon's heart. So on the left you have Duryodhana, Balarama and Bhima. For all that time they have been shown in the American museums, and so they have been, put in some way. But then to have them back, then you see that some legs were emptied, that you have some problems of holes that were made. And so how are we going to cope with all these problems? Just to find another way to expose them, and then to find the right location, and then to find the right place to do it, because if you do it in Phnom Penh, you do it in Siem Reap, you do it in their own their province of origin, we don't know yet. And all that takes time, takes studies, and takes money. Now into the matter which is more dear to my heart, of course, is the Cambodian viewpoint. So in Cambodia, the preservation of the archaeological patrimony has become one of the main topics discussed among members of the local intelligentsia, which was not the case because it's not that natural. And so, as I told you, it's a recent phenomenon, and it occurs only in well-educated and Western-influenced environments. If you go and ask the worker or the farmer in his rice field, he would not object to earn some money by selling old stones to a foreigner. The culture of the old antiques is not that spread in the countryside. And besides, the country remains very poor, and there is a high demand for Angkorian antiques on the international market. You see, because you go to a very poor farmer in his rice field. For him, these carved stones arrived to his field because it was a gift of the ancestors. And the ancestors, so they are members of the family. If they are members of the family, they have to participate. So what the hell if they sell some little stones to a foreigner who just come by and said, okay, $100 for that? With $100 he can live 2 months. Very well with his family and his 2 children. How could you respond to that? So it's difficult to educate people. But still now we are organizing, we're touring the provinces, we are trying to explain that no, it's part of our culture, it's part of our patrimony, and this is the way we can save our dignity. So Angkor has always been the center on every Cambodian flag, as I told you, and the symbol of the Khmer nation. Looting is not a new behavior in Cambodia. All through the story, during wars with the Burmese, the Chams, and more recently with Thai and Vietnamese, Cambodian art crafts have always been valuable, and many of them were looted to be sold to foreigners all through centuries. So the situation at the National Museum right now is more or less like that. This temporary exhibition of the group of sculpture has been set up by the National Museum in the room next to the famous Vishnu of the Western Meba, the 2 Pandava, and above all, Duryodhana, Bhima, and Balarama. The other 4 pedestals were presented as well in order to give an idea of how the whole group should be. Now the exhibition is over. We are entering the delicate phase of the reparation of the damage due to the looting and the exhibition in the museum. In the meantime, efforts are made to integrate the Korke Prasad Krom art crafts in the room dedicated to Bantier Israel. The repatriation of the masterpieces of Khmer art is not only highly important in its symbolic weight, but also remains innerly tightly knit with the structure of the Khmer society. The roots of Khmer culture are connected to whatever could be a home for a spirit or a divine entity. These statues are holy not only because they are the representation of Hindu gods, but by far more thanks to the belief, the conviction that the stone itself is living through the presence of a spirit. Many Buddha statues, for instance, in Cambodia, are not revered as Buddhas, but as the home of the Black Lady, the Young Dragon, etc. The most famous example is the monumental statue of Vishnu, which was at the center of the sanctuary in Angkor Wat, and which is nowadays called by all Cambodians Tariet, name of the spirit of the Nyata, who is supposed to be living in it. And Simon here was the leader of the restoration of Tariet's statue, and he is the first researcher that I know who came to visit all the spiritual guides, all the spiritual crew, that's to say the masters in the area of Angkor, just to know how to cope with the tradition of Tariq. So, and did you notice that when Simon began to talk about Tariq, there was a sign of Tariq, because it was at that time, and not before and not after. So, he's with us. And that is part of your job, because you're going to be very important for us, because you're going to be the future of that job. And so please, when you go to, especially when you go to Cambodia, but wherever you go, just listen to people around you, because there is a memory in everybody, even in places where you think that everything was just wasted out or whatever. There is memory, and people know. But just let people come to you and speak. It takes time, but you have to be patient, and also perseverance. I also think that patience and perseverance are the keys to happiness in the world. So, just go for it.
Okay.